Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the 2020 APIA Scholars Address. I have the privilege to introduce Noël Harmon to you this morning and this afternoon, no matter where you are in the world. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use your chat or your Q&A box, and I will be monitoring them so that we can make sure that you are having a comfortable experience with us today, or if you need something answered, we'll make sure that Noël and the APIA Scholars team is aware of that. So with no further ado, I would like to welcome Noël Harmon.
Hi, everybody. I would say it's so good to see you. I can't see you, but I know you're all out there, and we're so grateful that you took time today to join us. I had no idea when we decided to do this that we have so many of you attending, but we are so grateful to have you. So we have a number of staff and a number of board who have joined us as well. So I want to send a quick shout out to them. Thank you for taking time as well. So as much as this year has been full of twists and turns, it has been an amazing time to work with scholars and to be supported by some of the world's most amazing companies and foundations who have been unwavering in their support of us at APIA Scholars, and most importantly, the scholars themselves. The support that we have felt from all of you has enabled us to really continue to carry out our mission despite the pandemic. As many of you know, our mission has really been to make a difference in the lives of APIA students by providing them with resources so that they can successfully maneuver to and through college and into the workforce. 2020 has definitely been an unprecedented year, but I think we've all had to be adaptable, flexible, and very patient. For us, that started, you're looking at our new office, and there's another picture of the entrance to our office. The year really did start with the completion of our new office space. We started working on that last summer, and then you wouldn't believe this if I told you, but we broke ground on this space. It was a raw space. We broke ground in March of 2020, and unbelievably, we finished on time in June. And ironically, you can't quite see it, but it is a very open concept. So I'll let you all chuckle at that. We are now installing shields and safeguards and things like that, but they're clear, so at least we can see each other. But we're very excited about this new office space. We hope to see you in it. We'd love to do an open house in 2021 or 2022. We'll see what lies before us, but we are very excited to host all of you in our space. And we know so many of you are from all over the United States as well as the Pacific Islands. And we hope that when you're in DC, whether it's to see us or not, that you will stop by and visit us. So our staff began working from home March 17th of this year. And like many of you, we've had a lot of adjustments that we've needed to make. I am particularly proud of this staff for the way that they have very quickly adapted to ensure that we would have an impactful and successful year despite the pandemic. The entire staff really rose up and remained laser focused on our students and scholars, and I'm excited to share some of our accomplishments over this past year. We have framed our reports with 3 overarching themes: scholar outcomes, diversity and inclusion, and connectedness and responsiveness, which is a little bit of a tongue twister. So the first is scholar outcomes. APIA Scholars began 17 years ago as a scholarship organization, but we have really adapted over time. We have administered a variety of scholarships to over 7,000 students, but we continue, as I said, to evolve and are now squarely focused on ensuring students getting to and through college successfully. We continue to be very committed to the disaggregation of data of our student and scholar experience, certainly through looking at it through the lens of disaggregated data. We think that is really the only way to truly understand our scholar and student needs, especially given that our community encompasses 48 plus different ethnicities with over 300 different languages spoken. This past year, as you can see, we administered about 1,300 scholarships. You can look at the gender identity breakout. We also, in that, so you'll see that we administered 426 scholarships under our scholarship program, our general scholarship program. We administered 406 scholarships under the Gates Millennium Scholars Program, 212 with our APIA partners for our APIA Scholarship, and 254 scholarships through our emergency scholarship fund, which I'll talk about more later. I think it's worth noting here when you look at some of this data, at least for me, I'm always surprised, but certainly this data underscores the great need that we have in our community. When we see that 65% of our scholarship awardees are first generation college students, 35% are first in their family to attend college, 70% live below the poverty line, and 70% come from families that make less than $30,000 a year. The second theme is diversity and inclusion. I love this picture. It reminds me of when we were all together. This was at one of the last events that we had here in DC. And so as you see, nobody's socially distant. Everyone is having a great time. This was a great event. But a lot has happened since then. And so in April of this past year, APIA Scholars issued our first statement of solidarity. You can find this on our website, and we'll also give you the link to this statement, conveying the unity of our community against increased violence, discrimination, and xenophobia against the APIA community, particularly in light of COVID. We also wanted to stand together with our friends and partners in other communities as advocates and allies, particularly the African American community, in light of the George Floyd murder. There was a lot going on. I think many of us were trying to digest a lot of things that were happening in April and May. One of the things that we did right away was host weekly chat and choose. We had a virtual chat room. It was over lunch, and so it was meant to be informal, just an opportunity really for our scholars to process the events that were happening nationally, regionally, locally, and individually. It was a way to connect folks. And finally, I'm really proud that this year the APIA Scholars Board, and I know many of our board members are on this call, have devoted a lot of time and effort into discussions focused on our renewed and strong commitment to diversity and inclusion related to our board membership and related to our staff. These are often difficult conversations, but I think that our board has a strong commitment to ensuring that we are committed to diversity and inclusion. Our third theme is connectedness and responsiveness. As 2020, as we turned the corner to 2020, we had a lot of exciting things that were planned for the year. And we really, as the pandemic began to sweep across the country, really needed to stop for a moment and really think about what we were going to be doing. What could we do, but also, what could we do physically, but also, what could we do to really be meeting the needs of our students and scholars? It was happening in real time. And so we really just pressed pause for a moment, gathered ourselves. We were, as a staff, learning how to shift to complete virtual engagement. And so we decided to just hear from our scholars firsthand. We put out a scholar survey. We put it out to hundreds, literally, of our scholars. We received hundreds of responses back. And as a result, we created a toolkit of financial, community, small business, and mental health resources to address individual and small group concerns. We relaunched our APIA Emergency Fund with support from Wells Fargo and Macy's. We'd always had this fund. In fact, we'd had it for several years. It was not well known, and not a lot of students had tapped into it. We opened this fund and within days had reached capacity. we'll talk about that more. We worked in partnership with some amazing funders that you'll hear about in a few minutes to just meet the very near-term basic needs of our scholars during the pandemic. I want to give a huge shout out to the programs team at APIA Scholars, led by Sean Godwall, who's our Vice President of Programs, Melissa May, who's our Director of Programs, as well as Ariane Martin, Flori Menziola, and Sierra Lloyd, who have all worked very hard to think about how we could continue to deliver relevant and needed programming this year. So while we had a few programs in person, we pivoted, and our first program was actually, again, it was planned to be in Los Angeles in March, at the end of March, and so we obviously canceled the in-person event, but very quickly the team put together a virtual programming experience for our students over the weekend. We had a lot of engagement. Over 255 students either attended or watched the programming afterwards. And they gave us a lot of data to inform. This was early on during the pandemic, and so we were able to get a lot of information from them about what they might need this coming year. So then in August, we held the Elevating Leaders Summit, which was a 4-day event on Zoom, which was mind-blowing to think about for me, a 4-day event on Zoom. But our scholars showed up in droves. Many of them had just landed on their college campus. They were quarantined in their residence hall room, so I guess they were a bit of a captive audience. They really engaged with us during that time. We had really an amazing programming and content that went on during those 4 days. I also want to give a shout out to our friends and colleagues at HSF, who I know some have joined us today, and we really we participated in a lot of the things that they were doing over the summer. They set the bar high and really showed us what could be accomplished using Zoom as a platform for all of this work. I think one of the things we're most proud about from these virtual programming opportunities that we had was just hearing from our scholars at the end of them. We had 100% of our scholars say that they would recommend, especially the Elevating Leaders Summit, to new APIA scholars next year. And 98% of our scholars reported being able to identify both the challenges that they would face in college, but also, and more importantly, how they could receive help, where they could go if they encounter challenges. And then 96% of our scholars, after completing the programming, shared that they felt confident in their ability to be successful in college. And that's really, that was huge for us. That's the news that we wanted to hear from them. We also really pivoted. I know that mentors and mentorship was something that was on the program team's mind, but we pivoted immediately. And we continue just to be overwhelmed with the number of APIA folks in our community who wanted to serve as mentors. And so this last year, we were able to facilitate more than 450 mentorship pairs across our professional and peer mentoring programs. And so I know for me, that's a huge number. I'm so thrilled and grateful that we have so many folks that have been volunteering their time to do this, but also scholars that are interested in participating in those programs. And if you'd like to join us, we'll be recruiting in February. Finally, recognizing that solutions for our community exist within our community, we launched the Social Innovation Fellowship with McDonald's. Fellows will be trained in frameworks and mindsets of design thinking and learn how to apply their skill set to mobilize higher education and workforce solutions for the APIA community. Fellows will also have the opportunity to learn from and engage with executives at McDonald's and on their projects. And then finally, something that we've really been wanting to do for a long time. Oh, and this is a picture. I love this picture. I said we have to make sure that we get this picture in. This was at our Leadership Academy, again, before the pandemic, but it was just an amazing time. We had a great time together, and it's a great memory for us. That one of the last ones we had all together. And so one of the last things I want to mention here is the Scholar Advisory Committee. So you'll see Chia. She is, her picture is, I guess the best way to describe it, it's right above the in the title. She is chair of this committee. This is made up of scholar alum, and current scholars, we had really been thinking about the importance of scholar voice. And we wanted to have that throughout our decision-making processes in the organization. And so we looked to this group for their strategic guidance, insight, and recommendations on the directions of all of our student programming. I can say that for so many times this year, we have reached out to ask, what do you think about us doing this or going in this direction? And so their input has been huge in our decision making. We also accomplished another goal in that as chair of this committee, Chia now sits on our board of directors. And so having a scholar voice as part of our governance is also something that we're just very, very excited to be doing this year. APIA Scholars for the last 17 years has been a leader in disaggregated research and putting out research that does look at information disaggregated. I guess today is the 9th of December, so almost literally a year ago, we were at the Press Club in DC releasing this report, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders in Higher Education. We had a number of our friends there. I think some folks, Charles may be on this call, but we're thrilled to host the event to release this. We know that Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders have and continue to lag behind in terms of persistence and graduation rates for a myriad of reasons. And so we really tried to delve into that so that we can make good decision making moving forward around further research and programming and services and partnerships with organizations and institutions moving forward. Tonight, actually, we're hosting a 3-hour event really in partnership with some of our APIA partners in the Pacific Islands. We've done a learning tour this year, and we'll be sharing out our findings of that learning tour in a 3-hour event this evening. So this report was really the springboard for some of that work. We also did a report looking at and exploring the impact of APIA grant-funded programs on student experiences and outcomes. It's a report on UNLV, but it really was a look at the way that state systems can work together for greater impact to alleviate some of the barriers and clear pathways for students to persist and be successful in college when they work together across a state system. But this year was really overtaken to some extent by COVID, and so we kept a very close watch around the research that was coming out around the impact of COVID-19, especially as it related to Asian Pacific Islanders in our communities. You'll see here certainly that Asian Americans are 2 to 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with COVID. We have over 2 million of our community members work as frontline and essential workers. I think many of you who are participating are well aware that so many Asian Americans have been sort of blamed or have been unfortunately attacked or have witnessed this as related to COVID-19, which is extremely unfortunate. And on top of all of this, we know that 75% plus of APIA owned businesses have had no luck in getting PPP loans or have had little chance of getting them. And so all of these things together certainly also impact our student community. When we drill down and we look at the impacts of the infection rates, the hate and the blame, the greater risk and slower recovery, that has drastically impacted our students. As you see, when we did our survey in May and we received so many responses, overwhelmingly, our scholars were concerned about their finances and their ability to pay bills, and mental health and emotional well-being was something that also rose very quickly to the top. We heard that in the survey, but we also, as we started to host events, virtual, the Chat and Choose and other events, we learned from our scholars just the amount of stress and mental taxation that they were experiencing during this time. So we knew that this was something that we definitely want to continue to pursue our ability to work with scholars to meet these needs. So we did a lot of pivoting in 2020, as I know most of you have done as well. And we've kept certainly as the year turned over at the start, I guess, of 2020, many of our partnerships and our sponsorships had already been developed. And but we realized it was just going to be a different year. And like so many of you, we were concerned about things that may or may not come to fruition, constraints that were now being put on some of our partners and funders, and what that would look like for us. With canceled events and fundraising activities that we had planned, many in the nonprofit world became just very concerned about our ability to keep programs and services going for the students and scholars and the communities that we serve. But for APIA Scholars, our top supporters, Wells Fargo and McDonald, not only were flexible and understanding as we quickly moved and pivoted our events to virtual platforms, they answered our call for increased support and for new programming. And so for that reason, we really wanted to highlight our partnership, the way that we work together this year, and just have a quick conversation with our friends at Wells Fargo and at McDonald's. First, I would say, since the beginning of our partnership with Wells Fargo, they have supported APIA Scholars with over 2,300 scholarships, volunteered over 1,300 hours, provided financial literacy training, excuse me, to over 4,400 students and families, and donated over 10 million to APIA Scholars. So I would now like to introduce you to Dewey Norwood, who is just an amazing man. I can now see him. I haven't been able to see him, so it's literally been like I'm just sitting here talking to myself. So I now get to see somebody. I'm so happy to see Dewey, that big smile. Dewey's the Senior Vice President, Enterprise, Diversity, and Inclusion at Wells Fargo. And we are thrilled that you were able to join us today. I had heard a rumor that you were going to be on the way to the dentist, but you look like you're not on the way to the dentist. So.
You know what? Noel, thank you for that. And can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure that my audio is working well. So yes, I did have a dentist appointment, though, that was moved back. And so I get to be here from Norwoodville, as we call it, in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. And so, Noel, first of all, thank you so much for this convening and bringing everyone together today. I want to say thank you to our board members. I want to say thank you to our Wells Fargo colleagues that are joining on the lines today. I want to give a shout out to Julie Caperton, our wonderful board member with APIA Scholars as well. And of course, all of the other funders that are around the virtual table here today. You know, Noel, when I reflect on the work that we're doing from a higher education perspective, you shared some numbers. Our firm actually has provided almost $88 million to support higher education programming since 2010. And we're excited about the strategic investments that the firm has made specifically in the work that APIA Scholars is doing. So on behalf of our 260,000 colleagues, thank you so much for all that you're doing and allowing us to be able to work with you all. You know, we said it before, 2020, what a year, very, very interesting in lots of different ways. And we're using the chat here. I'm gonna ask everyone that's on the chat today, go ahead and drop for us in there a word for you that speaks to 2020. I'm asking you limited to one word, but go ahead and drop one word in there. And remember, this is a PG-13 audience at the highest, so make sure you use the right kinds of words there. But as those words are coming in, you know, this is things that we're going to need to be able to balance through in given areas. And there's been so many things that individuals have overcome and so much great work that has happened. I want to commend APIA Scholars and the entire team on the pivot, you know, being able to shift in-person programming to a virtual delivery in a seamless way. From a funder's perspective, this is exactly what we're looking to be able to have happen. Also, the focus on meeting the needs of students and the critical needs, especially, whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's support for childcare, maybe in some instances, or maybe it's, you know, getting a new cell phone plan so you're able to log on to your classes. APIA Scholars delivered that on a case-by-case basis, meeting the specific needs of students in the exact way that they needed to have those things met. So again, from a funder's perspective, that's exactly what we need to be focusing in on. We've had other successes, whether it's the Lunar New Year kickoff that we had back in San Francisco. We were able to do that one in person. You heard Noel mention a number of times, the Elevating Leaders Summit, and also the great engagement that we've been having. So it's been a very, very successful year in spite of the pandemic. And what I would challenge us with is that we're going to have to do things in an even new and exciting way as we transition into 2021. And so I'm just looking at some of the words that have popped in here, and it's really, really great sentiments. And now I'm going to ask everyone to pop in the word that you have from an inspirational and an aspirational perspective for 2021. So we've talked about 2020. What do you want to see happening here for 2021? And so let some of those items come in, seeing innovation, seeing tenacity, seeing all kinds of good things that come in here. Resilience was one of the ones, growth and development, all great points there. So Noël, just want to thank you and congratulate you, first of all, for all of these areas. And we'll hand the reins back to you for a moment to see if there's any additional follow-up items that we may want to spotlight here during our time today.
Well, I think one thing I wanted to highlight with you, I feel like it's just the two of us right now, even though I see all these great words that are coming up, which are so inspirational.
Yes.
But, it's been a pleasure to work with you. Always so responsive, always very interested in and just genuinely concerned about the ways that you at Wells Fargo can meet immediate needs. And I'm talking certainly about 2020.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that that really struck me about our partnership this last year is sort of the way that, and people have their thoughts around, banks and what do banks care about, but you were so interested to know all of the data that we were collecting. And let me tell you folks, Dewey he was just blowing up my cell phone with texts and emails and my VP of development, Katrina Breeze as well. We were getting, Dewey, so what are you hearing from the students? How many numbers here and what is it they need? And what are the greatest needs that you're hearing about? And so Dewey, can you talk a little bit about, that drive for the data and how that maybe impacted some of the decisions that came forward in terms of the Wells Fargo Student Impact Scholarship that you decided to move forward with then in late spring?
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it there, Noël, that the Student Impact Scholarship was a program that was funded within our student segment and marketing world. So special shout out to Sarah Ostendorf and Cindy and Viv and the rest of the team from the Wells Fargo perspective that helped out to spin up this program. But we literally launched this program team working directly with APIA Scholars to meet those critical needs that we talked about earlier. $1 million providing $5,000 scholarships to 200 students to meet those immediate needs. Again, we referenced some of those a little bit earlier, but again, this is great work by APIA Scholars being able to tell us, hey, we have students that have housing needs. We have students that the only internet connection that they have is the one that's on campus. So when they go back home, they will not have internet and of course can't do their classes. Or hey, maybe there's a housing challenge or a food challenge in a given area. So we were able to take all that data and then meet needs in an immediate way, in an impactful way there for the students and for the scholars. And so I'll drop into the chat so you all can learn a little bit more about the Student Impact Scholarship, but this program was masterfully run by the APIA Scholars team. And we were able to get those dollars now to students at a time that we know they're going to be able to deploy them. Literally the dollars that we provided are helping students graduate. They're helping them keep housing going in the places that they need to. So timely dollars and dollars that are strategically invested at exactly the right place at the right time. So again, I'll drop into the chat some more details on that. But again, this is a program from a funder's perspective. We spun this program up very, very quickly. And literally over the course of 3 weeks, without going into some of the proprietary data, we received thousands upon thousands of applications from students saying, hey, listen, I need a little bit of support here to be able to get through. And through the great work of APIA Scholars, we were able to fund students across the spectrum, not just Asian Pacific or identifying students, but also students from all backgrounds and all experiences. So again, just congratulations on the great work there for the Student Impact Scholarship. And for the funders that are on the lines, if you're interested in finding a partner that you know is going to be able to add great value, is going to be able to measure twice and then cut once, this happens day in and day out with the great partners here at APIA Scholars. So Noël, excited to be on with you all for today. Again, I'm going to drop a couple of items into the chat and we can certainly take any questions that we need to later on. But I know we've also got our friends on from McDonald's today. And so I certainly want to yield the microphone back to you so we can hear from Jimmy and his team for the great work happening there under the golden arches, as they say.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Dewey. I think anybody who I can see in the chat that people that know Dewey are excited to see him and hear from him today. He is really a pleasure to work with, and we are so grateful to Wells Fargo for all of your support. I think what's amazing is just sort of the continued commitment to APIA Scholars and our students, but really this just amazing support that we've had this year on all fronts. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And that does not happen without exceptional leadership, Noel. So please take a bow for you and the entire team. I hope you all feel good about all that's being accomplished. And there's more to come. So let's keep building from here.
Well, thank you so much. I want to shout out to Catherine Litton and Sierra Lloyd, who are our scholarship directors, who have worked tirelessly, sometimes till 3 a.m. to make sure that we're really meeting the needs of the scholars. The entire Wells Fargo team, our team, Katrina Breeze and
Yes.
Catherine and Sierra and others that have been working directly with the Wells Fargo team. This has been a weekly event, and we're thrilled to be able to do it. So.
But again, well, that's the attention to detail that you talked about. And again, for the funders that are on the lines that are considering engaging, this is the level of engagement that you're going to receive with APIA Scholars. Again, it's going to come from Noel. It's going to happen with Catherine. It's going to happen with Sham. It's going to happen with Katrina. It's going to happen with Flory. Everybody across the team is able to deliver this in the right kind of a way. So you can rest assured that your dollars are going to be invested and you're going to be able to see the impact here long term. So Noel, back to you.
Thank you so much, Dewey. And Dewey beat me today. I did not find my pin. I think I left all my APIA Scholars pins, which are limited edition pins, by the way, in my office in DC. So thank you for showing everybody our pin, Dewey. Well, I want to turn to McDonald's. Oh, Dewey's back. Okay, Dewey's gone. All right, I want to turn to our amazing friend, Jimmy Ferguson at McDonald's. Our next sponsor has literally been with us from the very beginning. McDonald's and the Asian McDonald's Owners Operations Association. Everyone's trying to kill me with acronyms today. We're strong advocates to establish an organization to meet the higher education needs of underserved and underrepresented Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Since our founding, McDonald's and AMOA have contributed over $2.5 million to APIA Scholars. 2020 was going to be a big year for us, as we had just announced the launch of our first cohort of McDonald's APIA Scholars and a newly expanded programmatic partnership. Much like Wells Fargo, we had to reshape and plan for in-person programming and reached out to McDonald's to support the emergency fund needs of our scholars. I personally, I have notes that I would use to introduce Jimmy, but I also want to personally just say Jimmy has been an amazing mentor, board member. I think most of you know I have been president for 2.5 years. Jimmy was part of my onboarding, and he's just been so incredibly welcoming, and also so incredibly supportive. And I think that you dream that you get folks like him to be on your board who think with a single focus on how we can always be meeting the needs of our scholars. So it is with, Jimmy also got me back into eating Happy Meals. My daughter just loves them, and you know, I wasn't eating them so much, but now I'm a pretty big chicken nugget fan. So I am thrilled to introduce you to Jimmy Ferguson. He is a member of our board, as I said. He is an owner-operator of McDonald's of the greater Houston area. And I believe he's still president of AMOA. And so he's also a dedicated grandfather. So I am thrilled to introduce you, Jimmy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Noel. Do a great job, and always happy to listen and learn and being mentored by Wells Fargo. What a wonderful job you have done. Yes, I'm still the current chair of the Asian McDonald's Operators Association. And, I'm happy to share with you our news today of the work that we have been doing this year, but really started last year, with McDonald's, with Noel and APIA Scholars team concerning how we can support the students during this, really incredible challenging time. And as Dewey has stated, and how we were able to, change gears, shift positions, and provide what we need for the students today. As a founding member of the APIA Scholars some 17 years ago, McDonald's has always understood the importance of our education and what it plays with Asian and Pacific Islander American students today. For decades now, or more than that, that McDonald's had worked with API community leaders to provide resource for the students and parents concerning the colleges. And we have done this through our educational workshops throughout the country. So this year was going to be very special in 2020, that we have launched our first ever McDonald's APIA Scholarship Program, where we announced that $500,000 will be awarded this year. And where we will provide this to the first generation college students. When we look at the needs of the students, and we also announce programs to support those students. But as we all know, things happen. And we have never predicted how things are going to change, the impact that this was going to have on our students, especially the first year students. And so we changed gears, and along with our APIS team support, and looking at how can we support at this time the best way we can that the students was going to be benefit. So with that, we worked with Noël and her team, and we responded. And we saw how important it is that there were other needs the students had, whether it was the housing, food, or transportation. So working with Noël and her team and with Wells Fargo, we responded and supported reopening the emergency fund for the students. And we were committing to providing assistance for 200 students for this year. As we are wrapping up this year in 2020 and looking towards the 2021, we will continue to support the APIA Scholars, and with our mission, creating the opportunity for all of our APIA students, and for this opportunity to access to the college and whatever career that they choose to go to, and be the future leaders of America. And they are the treasures. And we have to make sure that we shine those treasures, we support those treasures. And McDonald's is committed to help make that happen in 2001 and many years after that. So thank you again. We will go through this. What an incredible job that you and your team did to make 2020 successful with everything that's been happening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. He didn't mention that this McDonald's stepped up to provide food assistance for our scholars. We had 300 applications for 200 scholarships, and so McDonald's gave us even more money, another $75,000 to continue to be able to meet that need. Once again, we shared data with them about what we were seeing in terms of the tremendous numbers of applications. So Jimmy, I see that one of our other founding people, Wei Ling Eng, has joined us today. And so, I certainly, and our staff and scholars and the board, we owe so much to the commitment and the passion and the foresight that you and Wei Ling and others had in the formation of this organization. None of us would be sitting here today if it wasn't for all of the hard work and the vision that you had. So thank you so much, not only in your current role, but in really building the foundation of this organization. I'm really honored to have you here today with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Noël. I'm glad to see Wei Ling. I haven't seen her to be on this webcast. To everybody, Wei Ling was the architect to this program. Very happy for her and her retirement.
Yes, she's retired and she's a grandma, and I think we haven't seen her as much because she has this cute little grandson now. So we're competing with Nicholas. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy. This has just been an amazing opportunity to not only say thank you to McDonald's and Wells Fargo, but also want to kind of end today really thanking a lot of different people. When I look at all of these companies and foundations that have stood behind us. I also have to just say that there are people, and so many of you know this, but there are really special people behind all of these names and all of these companies that we get to work with every day. And they're internal advocates for us. They constantly are beating the drum about the need in the Asian Pacific Islander community. They are our kind of troops on the ground and educating folks about the diversity within our community and the need that we have. And so we are honored, I speak on behalf of our entire staff and the board, to get to work with the many people that are that represent the companies that you see here. So I want to just say a huge thank you to all of our funding partners. And more. I also want to thank our APIA partners. We have long been partners with a number of APIA schools. I saw just very quickly in the Q&A, somebody asked about the difference between APIA and APIA. For many of you, you may be more familiar with minority serving institutions, such as HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions. APIAs are the Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander serving institutions. And you see them represented here. We have a scholarship partnership, certainly with all of these institutions, but we also have research partnerships that are ongoing. So we have a couple projects that we're doing right now with some of these institutions. We do programs at these institutions. Our Jumpstart College tours, which we were not able to do this year as they hinge on being in person, we have those at many of these institutions host those throughout the year. So we have very strong partnerships. We will continue to find ways to work with them. They are not a siloed programmatic thing that we do. Our APIAs are partners, truly partners in everything that we do. And we're excited to also be bringing on some folks to our board who are from some of these institutions. So I also want to thank individuals. As you see, so many people have given gifts over this last year, and so we want to thank them as well. And then also, I am just so lucky. I feel like I am the one who gets the benefit from working with the amazing board and staff. You see the board, I think you might see them on the right side of your screen, and our staff on the left side. But these are just amazing folks. They work tirelessly. Our staff, we were just in the office yesterday on the floor, stuffing boxes and sending out boxes at the post office 47 to be exact. This team pulls together. They do the grunt work, they do the planning, they do the strategy, the execution. They're just amazing, and I'm very honored. I know I think almost all of the staff are on today, so I'm looking right at you and saying a huge thank you for all of your hard work. I value and just cherish all of the work that you do for us, so thank you. Also to the board, we have an amazing board. When I came on, I was like, I want an engaged board. Well, I got an engaged board. Every single person is just so committed and passionate about the work that we do. We are a very close board, and so it was very difficult this year, in the spring of this year, we lost a board member. You'll see him here in memorandum, Victor Koo. I believe his sister and parents are on this webinar. We wanted to, again, just honor him. We are thrilled to announce actually that because from his sister and his parents have decided to launch the Victor Koo Memorial Scholarship, which we will be launching in the spring. This is a 10-year, decade-long, multi-year scholarship commitment from the Koo family. So that Victor's really his legacy and his commitment to education will live on through the students that receive his scholarship. And finally, I want to thank really all of you. You are volunteers, you are partners with us, you are thought partners with us. There's so many of you who have volunteered your time to read. For those of you that don't know, we still do an in-person read. So we have people, hundreds of people, literally, from all over. My aunt reads for us as well, and my uncle, everybody. everybody gets involved. It's amazing in the spring when we do a reading. We have 300-400 people reading our applications. So many of you, our thought partners, are available. Shout out to other female leaders, Madeline Mielke at Apex, who is always on speed dial to talk about any issues. It's such an amazing community. You all have supported us through this year. We want to thank our partners. I know Angelique is on as well at AIGC. Thank you so much for your partnership. We have so many people to thank. Can't thank you all. We tried to capture you all. If you can find yourself in this picture, that would be amazing. So anyway, thank you to all of our volunteers and supporters and partners. Finally, I would just say, in reviewing this year, I feel tremendously blessed and grateful to have the opportunity to work with this organization, learn from the people within the organization, and learn from so many of you. So it's a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for your support and commitment. And certainly, while I think we're all ready for 2020 to move on, we have found a lot of hope, a lot of opportunity, a lot of things to be very grateful for this year. And so I wish you and your families the best holiday season and a very safe and happy new year as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in 2021.